I am Joshua, 35 years old, and my brother looked me dead in the eye and told me our mother was in a morgue, while she was sitting 10 feet away in the back of my car. Before I tell you how I wiped that smirk off his face and took back what was ours, tell me where you're watching from in the comments below. I love seeing how far these stories travel. The gravel crunched satisfyingly under the massive tires of the Rolls-Royce Cullinan. It wasn't my car, it belonged to a client who owed me a favor, but right now it was the perfect prop. I needed to look like money. I needed to look like power. But mostly, I needed to look like I didn't have a care in the world, which was the exact opposite of how my stomach felt. It was twisted in knots, a mix of adrenaline and pure, unadulterated rage. I pulled up to the wrought iron gates of the family estate. It was a beautiful place, a sprawling colonial house in upstate New York that my father had built with his bare hands and a lifetime of savings. Now, it looked like a fortress, and standing there, leaning against the brick pillar like he owned the world, was my brother, Ethan. Ethan, 40 years old, the golden child. He was wearing a suit that cost more than my first car, his hair slicked back, checking his watch as if I was late for a business meeting. Parked behind the gate, in the circular driveway, was his pride and joy, a black Porsche Panamera. I knew for a fact he hadn't paid the lease on it in 3 months. I didn't honk. I just rolled down the window. The winter air bit at my face, but I didn't feel the cold. I felt the heat coming off him. "You've got some nerve showing up here, Josh," Ethan said. He didn't even look at me. He was inspecting his manicured fingernails. "I told you on the phone. The funeral is Friday. Private ceremony. You aren't on the list." I turned off the engine. The silence was heavy. "Open the gate, Ethan." He laughed. It wasn't a happy laugh. It was a dry, hollow sound that grated on my nerves. He walked over to my window, placing his hands on the door frame, invading my space. "You don't listen, do you? Mom died last night. Heart failure. It was quick. She's gone, Josh. And the house? It's mine now. The locks are changed. The alarm code is changed. Go back to whatever hole you crawled out of." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. He snapped it open and held it up to my face. It was a death certificate. I saw the seal. I saw the signature. Margaret Harrison. Date of death, January 14th. Time, 11:42 p.m. "Official," Ethan smirked. "Signed by Dr. Whitmore. You want to argue with a medical professional? You want to argue with the law? It's over. Go home." I looked at the paper, then I looked at him. I saw the desperation hiding behind his eyes. He was sweating, despite the freezing temperature. His pupils were dilated. He was terrified, but he was doubling down on the lie because he had no other choice. He had bet the farm on this lie. "You really did it," I said softly. "You really declared her dead. She is dead to the world, Josh. And legally, that's all that matters. Now get off my property before I call the cops for trespassing." I shook my head, a slow smile spreading across my face. It wasn't a nice smile. It was the kind of smile a wolf gives before it takes down a deer. "Funny thing about that death certificate, Ethan," I said, my voice steady. "It's missing one crucial element." "Oh yeah? What's that?" he challenged, crossing his arms. "The body." I pressed the button on the driver's side door panel. The rear suicide door of the Rolls-Royce swung open smoothly, almost silently. Ethan frowned, looking past me. "Who did you bring? Your lawyer?" "It doesn't matter. The inheritance is—" His voice died in his throat. He choked. He actually choked on his own spit. His eyes went wide, bulging out of his head like a cartoon character. He stumbled back, tripping over his own expensive Italian shoes, and fell hard onto the frozen gravel. Stepping out of the back seat was my mother. She wasn't a ghost. She was very real. She was wearing a thick wool coat I'd bought her yesterday and a red scarf wrapped around her neck. She looked tired, yes. She looked thinner than she should have been. But her eyes? Her eyes were sharp. They were blazing with a fire I hadn't seen in years. "Hello, Ethan," she said. Her voice wasn't weak. It was cold steel. Ethan scrambled backward on the ground, crab walking away from her as if she were a demon. No, no, that's impossible. I saw. The doctor said. The doctor you bribed? I asked, stepping out of the car and standing beside Mom. I put a hand on her shoulder. She was trembling, not from cold, but from fury. The doctor who signed a paper without even checking a pulse, because you promised to wipe his gambling debts. She's dead, Ethan screamed, pointing a shaking finger at her. The paper says she's dead. You're a hallucination. I am your mother, she shouted back, her voice echoing off the stone walls of the house she had lived in for 50 years. I changed your diapers. I paid for your college. I bailed you out when you crashed your car. And you sell me out for a house? You bury me while I'm still breathing. Ethan's face went from pale to purple. He scrambled to his feet, looking frantically between the paper in his hand and the woman standing in front of him. His reality was shattering. But then I saw the shift. The panic turned into something uglier. Denial. He realized that if he admitted she was alive, he was going to prison. So he decided to commit to the lie. He slammed his hand on the keypad of the gate, engaging the electronic deadbolt. This is a trick, he yelled, backing toward the house. That's not her. That's an imposter. My mother is dead. I have the certificate. Get out. I'm calling the police. Call them. I roared back. Go ahead, Ethan. Call them. He turned and ran toward the front door of the house. Our house. He fumbled with his keys, dropped them, picked them up, and practically fell through the door, slamming it shut behind him. We heard the heavy thud of the deadlock sliding home. I looked at Mom. A single tear traced a path down her cheek, cutting through the light makeup we had applied to make her look healthy. He locked us out, Joshua, she whispered. He locked me out of my own life. Not for long, Mom, I said, squeezing her shoulder. He thinks that piece of paper is his shield. But he just handed us the weapon we need to destroy him. To understand why my brother was cowering inside our childhood home while my mother stood shivering at the gate, we have to go back 48 hours. I was in Chicago working on a landscape architecture project that was supposed to be my big break. I had put my career on hold for years to care for Dad before he passed, and this was my chance to get back in the game. I hadn't spoken to Ethan in 6 months. We didn't get along. He was the success story, the real estate mogul with the trophy wife, Sarah, and the flashy lifestyle. I was just the younger brother who played with dirt. My phone rang at 2 a.m. on a Tuesday. It was an unknown number. Usually, I ignore those, but something in my gut told me to pick up. Is this Joshua Harrison? A woman's voice, whispering, terrified. Yes. Who is this? My name is Betty. I shouldn't be calling. If they catch me, I'll lose my job. Maybe my license. I sat up in bed, my heart hammering. What's wrong? Is it about my mother? Is she okay? Your brother, Mr. Ethan. He brought her here yesterday morning, to the Starlight Care Center in Queens. Starlight. I frowned. I knew the nursing homes in the area. Starlight wasn't a care center. It was a warehouse for the forgotten. It was a place where people went to die when their families ran out of money. Why would he take her there? She lives at home. She has a caregiver. He checked her in under a pseudonym, Betty whispered, her voice shaking. Jane Doe. He told the administration she has severe dementia, that she's aggressive. He authorized heavy sedation. But Mr. Harrison, I checked on her tonight when the supervisor was on break. She's not crazy. She's groggy from the drugs, but she knows who she is. She keeps asking for Joshua. My blood ran cold. Is she safe? For now. But I heard him talking to Dr. Whitmore in the hallway. They were talking about making it official by Thursday. They mentioned an insurance policy and a title transfer. Mr. Harrison, I think they're going to let her die. Or worse. I didn't pack a bag. I grabbed my wallet, my keys, and ran out the door. I drove like a maniac to O'Hare Airport and bought the first ticket to New York. The flight took 2 hours, but it felt like 10 years. Every minute, I imagined my mother, alone in a dark room, drugged and frightened, while her eldest son plotted her murder for a payout. I landed at JFK at 6 a.m. and rented the biggest, fastest car available. I needed something intimidating. When I pulled up to Starlight Care Center, it looked worse than I imagined. Peeling paint, barred windows, a smell of damp rot and disinfectant hanging in the air. It was a place of despair. I didn't go to the front desk. Betty had texted me instructions. Backloading dock. Door code 4591. Wait for shift change at 7 a.m. I waited in the shadows of the alley, watching the rats scurry near the dumpsters. At 7 o'clock sharp, the back door creaked open. A young woman in scrubs, Betty, peeked out. She looked terrified. She waved me in. Room 104, she hissed. Hurry. The day supervisor is a friend of your brother's. I sprinted down the hallway. The floor was sticky. Moans and coughs drifted from the open doors of other rooms. It was a nightmare. I found room 104 and pushed the door open. It was dark inside, smelling of stale urine and mold. On a thin mattress, curled into a fetal position, was my mother. Mom! I whispered, rushing to her side. She flinched, covering her face with her hands. No more needles. Please, Ethan, I'll sign the papers. Just stop. My heart broke into 1,000 pieces. Mom, it's me. It's Josh. She lowered her hands slowly. Her eyes were sunken, dark circles bruising the skin beneath them. Her lips were cracked. Josh? You're in Chicago. I'm here, Mom. I'm getting you out of here. I tried to help her up, but she was too weak. The sedatives were still in her system. I scooped her up in my arms. She felt so light, too light. She had lost weight just in the last few weeks. Hey! I spun around. A large man in a security uniform was standing in the doorway, blocking our exit. Where do you think you're going? That patient is restricted. Move, I growled. I'm not a violent man, but in that moment, I would have torn through a brick wall to get her out. I said, put her down. He reached for his radio. I didn't wait. I charged. I used my shoulder to check him into the doorframe. He grunted and stumbled back, the radio clattering to the floor. I didn't stop to fight. I ran. I carried my mother down the hallway, kicking open the back door, and burst out into the cold morning air. I gently placed her in the passenger seat of the rental car and buckled her in. As I ran to the driver's side, the back door of the facility flew open again. 2 more orderlies and a man in a white coat ran out. Stop that car! The man in the white coat yelled. That had to be the supervisor. I slammed the gas. The tires squealed, kicking up trash and slush as we fishtailed out of the alley and onto the main road. I didn't look back until we were 3 miles away. Am I dead? Mom asked softly, looking out the window at the passing city. No, Mom, I said, tears blurring my vision. You're very much alive, but according to Ethan, you're about to be. We spent the next day in a hotel room, hiding. I got food into her, water, helped her wash the smell of that place off her skin. As she regained her strength, she told me everything. How Ethan had come to her crying about debt. How he had asked for a loan against the house. How she had refused because it was the only thing she had left to leave to both of us. And how, the next day, Dr. Whitmore had come for a checkup and given her an injection that made the world go black. She wasn't suffering from dementia. She was suffering from betrayal. Back in the present, the police cruiser's lights flashed blue and red against the gray winter sky. Ethan had actually done it. He had called the cops on his own mother. 2 officers stepped out. One was older, tired-looking. The other was a rookie, hand resting nervously on his holster. Ethan came out of the house, waving the death certificate like a shield. Officer! Thank God! Ethan shouted, playing the victim perfectly. These people are trespassing. They're harassing me in my time of grief. My mother died last night. The older officer, Sergeant Miller, looked at Ethan, then at me, and finally at Mom, who was leaning against the Rolls-Royce, looking very much alive. "Sir," Sergeant Miller said to Ethan, "you say your mother is dead?" "Yes." "Here." Ethan thrust the paper at him. "Cardiac arrest. It was tragic. And now this man brings some actress here to torment me? It's sick. It's psychological warfare." Miller took the paper. He read it. Then he looked at Mom. "Ma'am, can you identify yourself?" "I am Margaret Harrison," Mom said, her voice shaking with rage. "And that man is my son. And I am not dead." Miller looked confused. He walked over to us. "Do you have ID, ma'am?" This was the trap. "My purse is in the house," Mom said. "He took it. He has my driver's license, my passport, everything." "She's lying," Ethan yelled from the porch. "She's a crazy woman my brother hired. Ask the doctor." Dr. Whitmore signed the certificate. "Call him." Miller looked at me. "Sir, this is a valid death certificate. Filed with the county this morning. Technically, legally, Margaret Harrison is deceased." "Officer, use your eyes." I snapped. "She is standing right here. Fingerprint her. Check her dental records. Do whatever you have to do. We can't just fingerprint someone on the side of the road based on a domestic dispute," Miller said, rubbing his temples. "Look, this is a civil matter, or a very strange criminal one. But right now, Mr. Harrison here has the deed to the house and a legal document stating the owner is deceased. I can't force him to let you in." "You're kidding me," I said, incredulous. "You're going to leave an elderly woman on the street because of a piece of paper? I'm going to ask you to leave the premises and sort this out at the station or with a lawyer," Miller said firmly. "If you don't leave, I'll have to arrest you for trespassing." Ethan smirked from the porch. "Bye, Josh. Take your zombie back to the circus." I wanted to charge him. I wanted to smash through the gate. But I felt Mom's hand on my arm. "Let's go, Josh," she said quietly. "Mom, we can't." "He wants a fight," she said, her eyes fixed on Ethan. "He wants you arrested so you can't stop him. Don't give him what he wants. We have the truth. He only has lies." She was right. If I got arrested, Ethan would have time to sell the assets, move the money offshore, and disappear. I needed to be free to hunt him down. "Fine," I said to the officer. "We're leaving, but you better write in your report that you saw a dead woman walking and talking. Because when this blows up, I don't want you saying you didn't know." We got back in the car. As I reversed down the driveway, I saw Sarah, Ethan's wife, watching from an upstairs window. She wasn't smiling. She looked pale. She was holding a phone to her ear, pacing back and forth. "Where are we going?" Mom asked as we pulled onto the highway. "To the Four Seasons," I said. "We're going to get room service, a warm bath, and then I'm calling Vance." "Vance?" Mom smiled for the first time that day. "That shark." "Yeah. Dad always said you only hire Vance when you want to burn the enemy village to the ground." Well, Ethan just lit the match. We checked into the hotel. I made sure Mom was comfortable, ordered her favorite soup, and then I went into the adjoining room and set up my command center. I called Vance, my old college roommate, who was now one of the most vicious asset protection lawyers in the city. "Josh," Vance answered on the first ring. "I heard about your mom. I'm so sorry, man. I was just about to send flowers." "Save the money," I said. "She's eating tomato soup in the next room." There was a long silence on the line. "Okay, I'm listening." I explained everything. The nursing home, the fake certificate, the standoff at the gate. "Okay," Vance said, his voice shifting into professional gear. "Here's the play. Legally, she's dead until a judge overturns it. That takes time. Ethan knows that. He's banking on the bureaucracy being slower than his liquidation process." "Liquidation? Josh, nobody fakes a death just for a house they can inherit eventually. He needs cash now. Fast. He's going to try to sell the house, the jewelry, the stocks, everything before the system catches up. We need to find out why he's bleeding." "How?" "Follow the wife," Vance said. "Sarah. She's the weak link. Ethan is arrogant, but Sarah is practical. If the ship is sinking, she's already looking for a lifeboat. The next morning, I left Mom with a private security guard I'd hired, an ex-Navy SEAL named Marcus who I told to shoot anyone who tried to give her a checkup, and met Vance at a coffee shop downtown. Vance was wearing a suit that cost more than Ethan's car. He slid a tablet across the table. "I ran Ethan's financials," Vance said, taking a sip of black coffee. "It's a bloodbath, Josh. He's not just broke, he's underwater. He leveraged his own house, maxed out his credit cards, and drained his kids' college funds." College funds. I felt sick. My nieces were sweet kids. Where did the money go? Crypto and online gambling. He lost big on some obscure coin that crashed last month, then tried to double down with sports betting to make it back. He owes $1.5 million to a lending group based in New Jersey. And by lending group, I mean guys who break kneecaps. So he needs the inheritance to pay off the loan sharks, I realized. That's why the rush. That's why the immediate funeral. Exactly. The funeral is set for tomorrow at noon. The burial is strictly immediate family. But here's the kicker. I found a pending transaction on the house title. A rush sale. Cash buyer. It closes tomorrow afternoon. He's selling a $3 million estate for $1.8 million just to move it fast. We have to stop him. We will. But first, we need leverage on the accomplices. Dr. Whitmore. I did some digging on him too. He's got a mistress and a nasty divorce pending. But more importantly, I found out where Sarah went this morning. Where? A high-end pawn shop on 47th Street. She pawned a diamond necklace. A big one. Vintage setting. My stomach dropped. That's Mom's anniversary necklace. Dad gave it to her for their 40th. It was in the safe at the house. Let's go get it back. We drove to the pawn shop. It was a sterile, secure place, not the dusty shops you see in movies. I walked in, slammed my hand on the counter, and demanded to see the manager. Vance did the talking. He threw around words like stolen property, RICO case, and accessory to fraud. The manager, a sweaty guy named Lou, folded in about 30 seconds. He brought out the necklace. Holding it in my hand, feeling the weight of my father's love for my mother being sold for quick cash, made me want to scream. "Sarah Harrison brought this in?" Vance asked. "Yeah." She was crying. Said she needed travel money. Said she was booking a flight to Paris for Sunday night. One way. "She's running," I said. "She knows Ethan is going down, and she's planning to take the cash and leave him to the sharks." "Perfect," Vance smiled. "We can use that." Next, we went to Dr. Whitmore's office. We didn't make an appointment. We walked right past the receptionist and into his examination room. He was a small man with nervous eyes. When he saw me, he dropped his clipboard. "You," he stammered. "Sit down, doctor," Vance said, closing the door and locking it. "We know about the gambling debts you share with Ethan. We know about the falsified death certificate. And we know you administered a paralytic agent, not a sedative, to Mrs. Harrison." I didn't mean to hurt her," Whitmore blubbered, sweat pouring down his face. "Ethan said it was temporary. He said he just needed her out of the way for a few days to get a signature. He threatened to tell my wife about your girlfriend in the city?" Vance finished. "Boring. Listen to me, doctor. You have two choices. Choice A, we go to the medical board and the police right now. You go to prison for attempted murder and fraud. Choice B, you come to the funeral tomorrow. You bring your conscience. And when the time is right, you tell the truth." Whitmore looked at us, shaking. "Ethan will kill me." "Ethan is a desperate man with a gambling addiction," I said, leaning in close. "But I'm a man who just came back from the dead to save his mother. Trust me, you should be more afraid of me." He nodded slowly. "I'll be there." That night, I went back to the hotel. Mom was watching TV, looking stronger. I showed her the necklace. She gasped, clutching it to her chest. "He sold it?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Sarah did. They're picking the bones, Mom. But tomorrow we feast. The funeral is at the house? She asked. Yes, in the grand parlor. He's invited everyone. The neighbors, the business partners, the distant cousins. He wants a big audience to validate the lie. He thinks if enough people see him crying, it becomes true. Mom stood up. She walked to the window and looked out at the city lights. I want to wear the red dress, she said firmly. The one you wore to Dad's retirement party? Yes, and I want my hair done. If I'm going to crash my own funeral, Joshua, I want to look like the Queen of the Damned. Friday, 11:45 a.m. The sky was gray and heavy with threatened snow. Cars were lining up along the driveway of the Harrison estate. Black Mercedes, Lincolns, a few Beamers. Ethan had really pulled out all the stops. I was parked a quarter-mile down the road in a black van with tinted windows. Inside were me, Mom, Vance, and a two-man camera crew I had hired to livestream the event. If Ethan wanted a show, I was going to give him a blockbuster. Mom looked incredible. She was wearing a deep crimson suit, her silver hair styled perfectly, the diamond necklace around her neck. She didn't look frail anymore. She looked formidable. Are you ready? I asked, taking her hand. I'm ready to take out the trash, she said. God, I love this woman. We watched on a tablet linked to a hidden camera Vance had planted in the parlor earlier that morning. Bribing the caterer was surprisingly cheap. The room was packed. Lilies, Mom's least favorite flower, were everywhere. A closed casket stood at the front of the room. A casket. He had actually bought a casket. It's empty, Vance whispered, or filled with sandbags. Ethan was standing by the casket, dabbing his eyes with a handkerchief. He looked solemn, tragic. Sarah was beside him, looking pale and jittery, clutching her purse like it contained a bomb. The service began. A priest, someone I didn't recognize, probably hired, said a few generic words about a life well lived. Then, Ethan stepped up to the podium. Thank you all for coming. Ethan began, his voice cracking theatrically. My mother, Margaret, was the light of this home. Her passing was so sudden, so cruel. Just Tuesday, we were laughing together in the kitchen. Mom snorted in the van. I haven't laughed with him in 10 years. She was worried about the future. Ethan continued, warming up to his lie. She told me, Ethan, take care of the house. Take care of the family. I leave it all to you because I know you are the strong one. The audacity. He was putting words in the mouth of the woman he tried to kill. She explicitly told me she didn't want my brother, Joshua, involved. Ethan lied smoothly. She knew he had his own struggles. She wanted the estate to remain intact under my care. That was the signal. Let's go, I said to the driver. The van rolled up to the front door. We didn't knock. I had the spare key that Ethan didn't know about, the one hidden inside the hollow brick in the garden wall. I'd grabbed it during the commotion yesterday. Inside, Ethan was wrapping up. So, as we say goodbye to Margaret, let us remember her generosity in leaving this legacy to me. I unlocked the massive oak front doors. I signaled the camera crew. Action. I pushed the doors open. They swung wide with a heavy thud that echoed through the silent house. Every head in the room turned. The air left the room. I walked in first. Interesting eulogy, Ethan. A bit heavy on the fiction, though. Joshua, Ethan barked, his face flushing red. I told you not to come. Get him out of here. This is a sacred moment. It's certainly a moment, I said, stepping aside. But I think the guest of honor would like a word. I extended my hand back toward the foyer. Mom stepped into the frame. The sound that filled the room wasn't a scream. It was a collective gasp, a sucking in of breath from 50 people at once. It was the sound of reality bending. Mom walked down the center aisle. Her cane tapped rhythmically on the hardwood floor. Tap, tap, tap. She didn't look at the guests. She looked straight at Ethan. Ethan froze. He gripped the podium so hard his knuckles turned white. He looked like he was seeing a ghost. His mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. Sarah, standing in the front row, let out a small whimper and collapsed into her chair. Mom," Ethan whispered, his voice picked up by the microphone. "Hello, Ethan," Mom said, stopping 10 feet from him. Her voice was amplified by the acoustics of the room. It was clear and strong. "You ordered the lilies. You know I hate lilies. They smell like death. You're dead," Ethan stammered. "The certificate. The certificate signed by Dr. Whitmore?" Mom asked. She turned to the back of the room. "Doctor, would you like to clarify my condition?" Dr. Whitmore stood up from the back row. He looked like he was about to vomit. "She's alive," he shouted, his voice cracking. "She's alive. Ethan made me do it. He threatened me. It's all a lie." Chaos erupted. People jumped out of their seats. The cousins were screaming. The business partners were pulling out their phones. The live stream comments on my phone were exploding. Ethan panicked. He abandoned the ghost narrative and switched to attack. "She's senile," he shouted into the microphone, his voice booming. "She doesn't know what she's doing. This is a stunt by Joshua to steal the inheritance. She belongs in a home." Mom walked right up to the podium. She looked small next to him, but she loomed like a giant. "The only thing that was stolen, Ethan," she said, her voice cutting through the noise, "was my trust in you. And you didn't just steal it. You killed it." "Security," Ethan yelled, looking around for the hired guards. "Get them out." "I don't think so," I said, stepping up beside Mom. I pulled a folded document from my jacket pocket. "This is a court order obtained an hour ago by Vance here. It revokes your power of attorney due to evidence of fraud and attempted homicide. You don't own this house, Ethan. You don't own a damn thing." Ethan looked at the paper, then at the crowd, then at the empty casket. He realized the walls were closing in. He did the only thing a coward does when cornered. He tried to run. He shoved Mom. It wasn't a hard shove, but she was 75. She stumbled back. That was the mistake that ended him. When Ethan put his hands on our mother, the room didn't just gasp. It growled. But nobody moved faster than me. I caught Mom before she fell, steadying her against the casket. Then I lunged. I hit Ethan with a tackle that would have made my high school football coach proud. We crashed into the podium, sending the microphone, the water pitcher, and the fake eulogy notes flying. We hit the floor hard. Ethan scrambled, throwing a wild punch that grazed my ear. I didn't punch back. I didn't need to beat him. I just needed to hold him. I pinned him to the ground, twisting his arm behind his back. "Stay down," I yelled. "It's over. Get off me," he screamed, thrashing like a trapped animal. "It's my house. It's my money. I earned it. I dealt with her nagging for years. I deserve it." "You deserve a cell," I spat. The doors burst open again. This time it wasn't family. It was the police. Real police. Not just patrol officers, but detectives. Vance had timed it perfectly. Ethan Harrison, Detective Miller, the older officer from yesterday, shouted, gun drawn but pointed at the floor. "Stay on the ground. You are under arrest for fraud, forgery, and elder abuse." I let go of Ethan and backed away, breathing hard. 2 officers hauled him up. His suit was torn, his hair messed up, his face red with exertion and shame. He looked around the room, searching for an ally. "Sarah," he yelled. "Sarah, tell them she was sick. Tell them we did it for her." All eyes turned to Sarah. She was standing by the side exit, clutching her bag. She looked at her husband, then she looked at the police. "I don't know what he's talking about," Sarah said, her voice trembling but clear. "I told him to stop. I told him it was wrong. I have the recordings." You traitoress." Ethan lunged at her, but the cops slammed him against the wall. "Divorce papers will be sent to your lawyer, Ethan," Sarah said, tears streaming down her face, though whether they were for him or for herself, I couldn't tell. "I'm not going to prison for your gambling debts." "Take him away," Mom said. She was standing by the casket, smoothing her jacket. She didn't look at him. She looked through him. As they dragged Ethan out, he passed by Mom. He stopped fighting for a second. "Mom, please. I'm your son. Don't let them take me. I'll lose everything." Mom looked at him. The silence stretched for an eternity. "I lost my son 3 days ago," she said softly. "The man who put me in that nursing home died the moment he signed that paper. Goodbye, Mr. Harrison." Ethan started wailing as they shoved him into the squad car outside. The sound faded as the sirens wailed to life. The room was silent. The guests were stunned. The funeral was over, but the drama was just beginning. Then the creditors showed up. 2 men in black leather jackets walked in through the open front door. They didn't look like police. They looked like problems. They scanned the room and locked eyes with me. "Where's Ethan Harrison?" one of them asked. "Police custody," I said. "You'll have to get in line behind the state of New York." "He owes us $1.5 million, the man grunted. "Collateral was this house." "The house belongs to Margaret Harrison." Vance stepped forward, his lawyer voice in full effect. "The title transfer Ethan signed was fraudulent. The signature was forged. The owner is alive and standing right there. Your contract is void." The loan shark looked at Mom. Mom looked right back at him, raising an eyebrow. "You boys want a cookie?" she asked. "Or do you want to leave before the detectives come back inside?" The man chuckled, shook his head, and turned around. "Can't collect from a ghost, I guess. We'll deal with him in prison." When the house finally cleared out, guests whispering as they left, the caterers packing up the untouched food, it was just me, Mom, and Vance sitting in the living room. The empty casket was still in the corner, a grim reminder of the day. Mom walked over to the fireplace. Above it was a portrait of Ethan. She took it down. She didn't smash it. She just turned it around and placed it on the floor, facing the wall. "Are you okay, Mom?" I asked. She sat down in her favorite armchair, the one Ethan had tried to sell. She looked tired, incredibly tired, but at peace. "I'm alive, Joshua," she said. "And I have my house. And I have one son who loves me. That's more than enough." I walked over and knelt beside her chair. "I'm sorry I wasn't here sooner. I'm sorry I let it get this far." She cupped my face in her hands. "You came when I called. That's all that matters. You saved me." She looked at the diamond necklace Sarah had pawned, now back around her neck. "Joshua," she said, "I need to rewrite my will. Tomorrow." "Mom, we don't need to think about that right now." "Yes, we do," she said firmly. "Because I'm not leaving everything to you." I blinked. "What?" "I'm leaving you the house, of course. And enough to start your firm properly. But the rest? The investments? The cash? What about them?" "I'm starting a foundation," she said, her eyes gleaming. "The Starlight Foundation. We're going to use the money to provide legal aid for seniors who are being exploited by their families. I want to make sure no other mother wakes up in a dark room wondering why her child abandoned her." I smiled. "That sounds perfect. And one more thing," she added. "Get that casket out of my living room. It's bad luck." I laughed. It was the first time I had genuinely laughed in 3 days. "I'll turn it into a planter for the garden." "You do that," she said, leaning back and closing her eyes. "Now go make me some tea. I plan on living for a very long time." The silence that settles over a house after a police raid is heavy. It's not peaceful. It's thick, loaded with the echoes of shouting and the phantom weight of what just happened. After the officers took Ethan away, after the creditors with their leather jackets and vague threats rumbled off in their SUVs, and after the last of the confused funeral guests drove away, the house felt enormous and cold. I spent that first night sleeping on the couch in the living room. Not because I didn't have a room. My old bedroom was still upstairs, untouched since college, but because I couldn't bring myself to leave Mom alone on the ground floor. Every creak of the floorboards, every rattle of the wind against the colonial windows made me jump. I kept expecting Ethan to burst back in, waving another forged document, or Dr. Whitmore to show up with a syringe. But nobody came. Just the morning sun, filtering through the windows, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air where the casket had been. We had the casket hauled away at 8 a.m. by a confused junk removal crew. Mom stood on the porch, wrapped in a thick cardigan, drinking her tea, watching them load the mahogany box onto a flatbed. She didn't look sad. She looked like a general surveying a battlefield she had just won. "That cost $6,000, she murmured as the truck pulled away. Ethan always did have expensive taste with other people's money. "We'll get it back, Mom," I said, stepping up beside her. "No, we won't," she said, turning to go inside. "But we bought something more valuable with it. We bought the truth." The next few months were a blur of legal battles and sawdust. Vance was a pit bull. He didn't just go after Ethan. He went after the entire ecosystem that had allowed this to happen. The legal proceedings were ugly. Ethan, true to his nature, didn't go down quietly. From his holding cell, he tried to fire Vance, who wasn't his lawyer, tried to sue the police for excessive force, and even tried to give an interview to a local tabloid claiming Mom was mentally incompetent, and he was the victim of a hostile takeover by his jealous younger brother. But the evidence was insurmountable. The trial date came 3 months later. I remember sitting in the courtroom holding Mom's hand. Her grip was iron. Ethan was brought in wearing an orange jumpsuit. It didn't fit him. The tailored Italian suits were gone, and without them, he looked smaller, deflated. He looked like what he was, a middle-aged man who had never grown up. Sarah took the stand first. That was the nail in the coffin. She looked tired. She had moved into a small apartment in Jersey and was working as a receptionist at a dental clinic. The Ferrari was gone. The jewelry was gone. She testified with a flat, emotionless voice. She detailed everything. The gambling debts, the desperate meetings with loan sharks, the night Ethan forged Mom's signature on the title transfer. "He told me it was the only way," Sarah told the jury, refusing to look at Ethan. "He said Mom was old, that she wouldn't notice if she was in a home, and that the insurance money would save us. He said it was a victimless crime." "And did you believe him?" the prosecutor asked. Sarah paused. She looked at Mom. "I wanted to believe him, because I liked the life we had. I'm sorry, Margaret. I'm so sorry." Mom didn't nod. She didn't smile. She just watched. When it was Dr. Whitmore's turn, he folded completely. He admitted to the falsified death certificate, the paralytic drugs, the bribes. He cried on the stand, talking about his own debts. It was pathetic. But the moment that stays with me wasn't the testimony. It was the sentencing. Ethan stood up to address the judge. I expected an apology. I expected him to beg for mercy. Instead, he looked at Mom and said, "I did everything for this family. I managed the estate. I took care of the repairs. I deserved a share. If you hadn't been so stingy, none of this would have happened." The courtroom went silent. Even his own public defender looked down at the table, embarrassed. The judge, a stern woman with zero patience for narcissists, looked over her glasses at him. "Mr. Harrison, you didn't manage the estate. You cannibalized it. You treated your mother not as a parent, but as a piggy bank. That is not taking care of family. That is predation." Ethan was sentenced to 8 years in state prison for fraud, forgery, elder abuse, and grand larceny. Dr. Whitmore got 5 years and lost his medical license permanently. As the bailiffs led Ethan away, he turned to look at us one last time. There was no remorse in his eyes, just anger. He was still the victim in his own story. Mom didn't cry this time. She took a deep breath, stood up, and walked out of the courtroom without looking back. "Are you okay?" I asked her in the car. "I have one son," she said simply, "and he's driving the car. Let's go home." With the legal nightmare finally receding, we turned our attention to the house. It needed healing just as much as we did. I decided not to go back to Chicago. My life was there, sure. My apartment, my few friends, but my purpose was here. I moved my small architectural practice to New York, setting up a studio in the sunroom. Mom and I started the renovation. We didn't just repair, we reclaimed. We ripped out the carpets in the guest room where Ethan had stayed when he visited. We repainted the walls. We turned the dark, stuffy parlor, the site of the infamous funeral, into a bright, airy library. We installed floor-to-ceiling bookshelves and filled them with Mom's poetry collections and novels. We bought huge, comfortable armchairs. I designed a new extension for the ground floor, a master suite for Mom, so she wouldn't have to climb the stairs anymore. I put everything I knew about accessible design into it: wide doorways, a walk-in tub, heated floors. I wanted it to be a sanctuary, not a hospital room. One afternoon, about 6 months after the funeral, I was in the garden, overseeing the installation of a new stone pathway. Vance pulled up in his car. He waved a thick manila envelope at me. "Hey Josh," he called out. "Got a minute? Need your signature on some trust documents." "Sure." I wiped the dirt off my hands and walked over. "What is it now? More cleanup from Ethan's mess?" "No," Vance said, leaning against his car. "This is about you." He opened the envelope and pulled out a stack of financial records. "Your mother asked me to show you this. She thought it was time you knew." I looked at the papers. They were bank transfers. Old ones, dating back 10 years. "What is this?" I asked, squinting at the numbers. "You remember when you started your first firm in Chicago?" Vance asked. "You got that angel investor grant? The one that paid for your office space and your first 3 months of overhead?" "Yeah, the anonymous arts patron of Illinois. It saved my career." Vance tapped the paper. "That was Margaret." I froze. I looked closer at the dates. "And here," Vance pointed to another line. "When you broke your leg and didn't have health insurance 5 years ago, the hospital bill was paid by a charitable donation. That was her." "And the scholarship during my master's program?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "Her again." I stared at the documents, my vision blurring. For years, I had thought I was the black sheep. I thought Mom was disappointed in me because I didn't pursue business like Ethan. I thought she was distant because I was struggling while Ethan was succeeding. "Why?" I asked Vance. "Why didn't she tell me? Why did she let me think I was doing it all alone?" "Because she wanted you to believe you could." Mom's voice came from the porch. I turned around. She was standing there, leaning on her cane, watching us. "If I had given you the money directly, Joshua," she said, walking slowly down the new stone path, "Ethan would have found out. He would have screamed about fairness. He would have demanded his share. And worse, you might have felt indebted or weak." "Mom," I choked out. "I saw you working hard," she said, reaching up to brush a smudge of dirt off my cheek. "I saw you choosing passion over profit. I was so proud of you, but I had to protect you from your brother's greed, and I had to let you build your own confidence. I wanted you to know that your success was yours, even if I helped clear the path a little." I dropped the papers and hugged her. I hugged her so hard I was afraid I might break her, but she hugged me back with that surprising strength she still possessed. "I thought you favored him," I whispered into her shoulder. "All these years, I thought you liked him better because he made money." "I never cared about the money, Josh," she said softly. "I cared about the character. Ethan had the bank account, but you had the heart. And in the end, the heart is the only thing that doesn't go bankrupt." That evening, we sat in the new library, surrounded by the smell of old books and fresh paint. The house didn't feel cold anymore. Felt like a fortress, yes, but a warm one. A fortress built on truth. "So," I said, pouring us both a cup of tea, "the house is secure. Ethan is in jail. The renovation is almost done. What's next for Margaret Harrison?" Mom took a sip of tea, her eyes twinkling over the rim of the cup. "Well," she said, "I have about $2 million that I was going to leave to Ethan. And since I'm not planning on dying anytime soon, I need to find a way to spend it." "A cruise," I suggested. "A villa in Tuscany? Boring." She waved a hand. "No, I want to make noise, Joshua. I want to make trouble." She set the cup down. I want to go after the others. The others. The other Ethans, she said, her expression hardening. The other Dr. Whitmores. Do you think I'm the only old woman who's been tricked into a nursing home? Do you think I'm the only mother whose child decided her life was worth less than her real estate? No, I said quietly. I know you're not. Exactly. I was lucky. I had you. Most of them have no one. They sit in those rooms, drugged and forgotten, while their families pick their bones clean. She leaned forward, and I saw the same fire in her eyes that I saw the day she stepped out of the Rolls-Royce. I want to start a foundation, Josh. A legal strike force. We hire the best lawyers, Vance is already on board, and we find these cases. We find the seniors who are being exploited, and we fight for them. We get them out. We get their money back. And we put the greedy children where they belong. I smiled. It was the perfect revenge. It wasn't just justice. It was a crusade. The Starlight Foundation? I asked, remembering the name of the hellhole she had escaped from. No, she said. That name is tainted. Let's call it the Phoenix Project. Because sometimes you have to burn everything down to rise from the ashes. 1 year later, the spring air in upstate New York is something special. It smells of wet earth, blooming lilacs, and possibility. I stood on the back porch of the estate, looking out over the garden. It was transformed. The overgrown hedges were gone, replaced by native wildflowers that attracted butterflies. The cracked concrete patio where Ethan used to smoke his cigars was now a beautiful cedar deck with a ramp that wound gracefully down to the lawn. Joshua, you're going to be late. Mom's voice rang out from the kitchen. I smiled and checked my watch. 10 a.m. The grand opening of the Phoenix Project's new headquarters was at 11 o'clock. I walked inside. Mom was standing in front of the hallway mirror, adjusting a silk scarf. She looked radiant. At 76, she had more energy than most people my age. The shadow of the nursing home had completely vanished from her face, replaced by a glow of purpose. I'm ready, Mom, I said. You look sharp, trying to intimidate the mayor. The mayor is a pussycat, she scoffed, grabbing her cane, which she used more for pointing at people than for walking these days. It's the press I'm worried about. I want to make sure they get the message right. This isn't charity. It's justice. We drove into the city in her new car. Not a Rolls-Royce this time, but a sensible, comfortable SUV that could haul boxes of legal files. The new office was in a renovated brick building downtown. I had designed the interior, of course. Open, accessible, full of light. No dark corners. No hidden rooms. When we arrived, the place was packed. Reporters, local politicians, donors. But the most important people were in the front row. There was Mrs. Higgins, a bewildered-looking 80-year-old woman clinging to a handbag. 3 months ago, her nephew had tried to sell her house while she was in the hospital for hip surgery. The Phoenix Project had intervened, blocked the sale, and secured her title. There was Mr. Henderson, a retired veteran whose daughter had drained his pension account. Vance's team had frozen the assets and recovered 80% of the funds. Mom walked up to the podium. She didn't need notes. Welcome, she said, her voice projecting to the back of the room. A year ago, I was dead. The room went silent. It was a hell of an opening line. My son, Ethan, decided I was dead because he needed my money. He erased my identity. He locked me away. And for 3 days, I ceased to exist. She looked around the room, making eye contact with the victims in the front row. We live in a society that tells us blood is thicker than water. We are told that family is everything, that we must forgive family, support family, and trust family above all else. But I am here to tell you that is a dangerous lie. I watched her from the side of the stage, feeling a lump in my throat. Family, she continued, is not defined by whose DNA you share. It is defined by who shows up when you are falling. It is defined by respect, by dignity. My son Ethan shares my blood, but he is a stranger to me. My son Joshua, and the people in this room who helped me, they are my family. She paused, her hand resting on the podium. The Phoenix Project is here to tell every senior citizen in this state. You are not a burden. You are not an asset to be liquidated. You are a person. And if your family forgets that, we will remind them. Loudly. The applause was deafening. I saw Mrs. Higgins wiping her eyes. I saw Vance nodding in approval. After the ceremony, there was a reception. I stood by the refreshments watching Mom holding court. She was laughing, listening, advising. She was in her element. She's a force of nature, isn't she? I turned to see Sarah standing there. I hadn't seen her since the trial. She looked different. Older, maybe, but softer. She was wearing simple clothes, holding a glass of water. "Hello, Sarah," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "I didn't think I should come," she said, looking down at her shoes. "But I wanted to see it. I wanted to see her win." "She won a long time ago," I said. "How are you?" "Getting by," she shrugged. "The divorce is final next week. I'm taking night classes, trying to get a real estate license." Ironically, she looked over at Mom. "Does she hate me?" "She doesn't think about you, Sarah," I said honestly. "And that's probably the best you can hope for." Sarah nodded, a sad smile on her face. "Fair enough. Tell her. Tell her I'm glad she's not dead." "I will." Sarah slipped away before Mom noticed her. It was better that way. We didn't need ghosts at a celebration of life. That evening, back at the house, the adrenaline finally wore off. We sat on the back deck, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of purple and orange. The air was cooling down, but the fire pit I had built kept us warm. "You did good today, Mom," I said, poking the fire with a stick. "We did good," she corrected. "I couldn't have done it without my architect." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a letter. It was unopened. The return address was the State Correctional Facility. "From Ethan?" I asked. "Yes. It arrived yesterday. Are you going to read it?" She looked at the envelope for a long moment. Then she tossed it into the fire. We watched as the paper curled, blackened, and burst into flame. The words inside, whatever excuses, whatever pleas, whatever manipulations, turned to ash and floated up into the night sky. "Why?" I asked. "Because I know what it says," she said, watching the sparks fly. "He wants money, or a visit, or forgiveness. He wants something. Ethan only reaches out when he wants to take." She turned to me, her face illuminated by the firelight. "I have nothing left to give him, Joshua. I gave him life. I gave him a childhood. I gave him chances. He spent them all. Do you miss him?" I asked. It was the question I had been afraid to ask for a year. "I miss the little boy who used to bring me dandelions," she said softly. "I miss the teenager who taught me how to use email. But that person doesn't exist anymore. He was consumed by the man who wanted a Porsche more than a mother." She reached out and took my hand. "You know, people always ask me how I knew you would come for me. In that nursing home when I was drugged and scared. How did I know?" "How?" "Because when you were 6, you found a baby bird that had fallen out of its nest. Ethan wanted to poke it with a stick. You built it a nest out of a shoebox and fed it worms for 3 weeks until it flew away. You've always been a builder, Josh. Fixer. I knew you wouldn't let things stay broken." I squeezed her hand. "I'm staying, Mom. I'm not going back to Chicago. The firm is doing well here. And I like the new library." "Good," she smiled. "Because I have a new project for you." "Oh no. What now?" "The garage," she said mischievously. "It's full of Ethan's old junk. I want to turn it into a guest cottage. For when the Phoenix Project clients need a safe place to stay for a night or two." I laughed. "You never stop, do you?" "Not until I'm actually dead," she said. "And as we've established, that's going to take a hell of a lot more than a fake certificate and a locked gate." We sat there in the silence, listening to the crackle of the fire and the wind in the trees. The house behind us was solid. The future ahead of us was clear. My brother tried to bury his past to secure his future. Instead, he buried himself. And in doing so, he dug us up. He forced us to see what really mattered. He thought he was inheriting a fortune, but he ended up giving me the greatest inheritance of all. The chance to really know my mother, and the strength to stand beside her as she changed the world. And honestly, that's worth a lot more than a Porsche. This story isn't just a drama about a greedy brother. It's a wake-up call about the vulnerability of our aging parents and the legal tools that can be weaponized against them. It is essential for care, but in the wrong hands, it is a license to steal. Never grant it blindly. Demand oversight, require a second signature for large transactions, or appoint a professional fiduciary if family dynamics are tense. The only reason Ethan got away with it initially was isolation. If you have elderly parents, show up. Unannounced visits are the best way to ensure they aren't being neglected or manipulated. As Margaret said, DNA doesn't guarantee loyalty. If a family member has a history of financial irresponsibility or gambling, like Ethan, do not give them access to the estate, no matter how much they guilt-trip you. I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to deal with a family member who put money over relationships? Or what steps are you taking right now to protect your parents or yourself from this kind of exploitation? Drop a good in the comments if you think Margaret is a hero for turning her trauma into a crusade to help others. Let's get this discussion going. Your story might help someone else spot the red flags before it's too late. Thank you for listening.